Here we are. So, peace, family. Welcome back. This is another episode of Hidden Healing, uncovering hidden healing, your weekly portal into ancient healing traditions of the African and African diaspora world. I'm so excited to be here. I'm your host, Arletha Lizana. I'm a healer, educator, and believer in the power of ancestral knowledge to transform how we live, how we eat, breathe, and how we love. So, this series is not just a conversation, it's a movement. We're reclaiming our divine right to wellness. So, it's brought to you by Sable Women Incorporated in partnership with Morehouse School of Medicine and Permetra International. And it's part of our powerful new African and African diaspora natural and traditional medicine online certificate program. So, in Uncovering Hidden Healing, every week we explore a new layer of healing. So, from plant medicines to sacred adornment, sound therapy, quantum healing, and today we're heading straight to one of the most sacred spaces in our culture, the kitchen. So, because food just isn't about calories or cravings, for us, food is ritual, memory, medicine, connection, culture. So today we're asking, how did our ancestors use food to heal the body and elevate the spirit? What secrets live in our spices, our stews, and our Sunday dinners? And how do we reclaim these foodways as part of our everyday healing practice? So, to help us dig deeper into this delicious conversation, I'm thrilled to welcome our guest today, Chef Za. So, good morning. Hi, Chef. Good afternoon. It's now Chef Za. Chef Za. So, good morning for us. Good afternoon, probably for someone else. Okay. So, Chef Nzali is also known as Chef Za. She's the executive chef and founder of Zaza's Kitchen, a boutique culinary company specializing in catering, private dining, and immersive cooking classes. Her culinary journey has taken her from Spelman College, yes, to the Italian Culinary Institute in Calabria, Italy. She also holds a degree in sociology and a food and nutrition teacher certificate from Columbia University. Chef Za combines her passion for culture, travel, fresh ingredients, and ancestral wisdom to create beautiful, healing food experiences that nourish far more than just the body. So, Chef Za, welcome to Uncovering Hidden Healing. I'm so excited to have you with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So you're welcome. So we're just going to jump right in. Like I said, it's fun conversation. So let's just start with your journey. So, like, what inspired you to bring together like culinary arts, healing, and culture into one space?
I think for me, cooking has always just been something I gravitated to. It's nothing more than that. Like when I was a little girl, I can remember visiting my grandmother's. Like all of my cousins would be in the living room, and then I would be in the kitchen with my grandma, like asking her all these questions, or even on weeknights, like making dinner. I was at my mom's like side with a little paring knife on a stool, standing like, what can I do now? What can I cut? What can I cut? And I think I was just so eager and interested in how food brought people together.
Mhm.
Um, and I think in the kitchen, like I'm someone who, loves to learn, and you can never know too much when cooking. Like there's always a deeper level in understanding how to be better. And so when I was little, I knew that I wanted to be a chef. It was just like, if you asked me when I was 8 years old, what do you want to do? I'm like, I want to be a chef, and I have pictures to show it. And so as I got older, went to my traditional academic journey, that landed me into a completely different space. And I was, you know, pursuing a PhD for some time. And then I remember a girl was like, what would you rather be doing? And so the answer was cooking. And funny enough, when I was at Spelman, I started Zaza's Kitchen. But for me, it was like, oh, I know that I have a little time. Like, let me just try this food thing. Like, let me try to make some money. And people were selling my plates out every week,
That's right.
meal prep out. And so, um, also in that same year, I did a food justice class. And
Mhm.
because I was a sociology major, it brought my worlds together in a way that I never knew could exist. And so beyond like my love for culinary, I was like, oh, I'm able to understand like the history of food and the soul food story, and understanding, how there's so many gender aspects to food and cultural aspects and political aspects in a way that we don't really talk about in everyday discourse. So
Mhm.
I studied that for quite a bit when I was in grad school, pivoted out, still stuck to Zaza's Kitchen, but kind of just
Mhm.
rebranded my approach and really wanted to help. people like us know how to eat better and provide, better options. So that's been my journey. It's been quite a bit. I've been doing Zaza's Kitchen for 7 years now, which is
What? Time flies. I remember you were starting. I can't that long. Wow. That is
right.
so awesome. I mean, and you just brought back so many memories. It's so many. I don't even know where to start. But like, being with my grandmother, like you're saying, like your first teachers, and just wanting to. We used to want to like. She's making like pies or cakes, and we want to lick the bowl or lick the spoon,
Exactly.
and
Inviting your siblings or whoever's
that's
around.
right.
Yeah.
That's right. So I remember that. You brought about memories being at Spelman, and being hungry. And so I could imagine that people were, your food was selling out. That's right. Because we were hungry and your food is just awesome anyway. So I can just imagine how that was and just learning, like you said, through your classes as well and just your experience. I mean, so this is just so, interesting and just really an important subject. So, how do you define like food as medicine, particularly within African diaspora traditions?
There's a simple saying, and it's "you are what you eat." And so I think when we think about food as medicine, it's like if you want to invest in your vitality, if you want to, you know, from a physical aspect, a spiritual aspect, a mental health aspect, there's so many properties that food can that you can embrace within food. And so I think this is like, a can of worms. Like
It
when we
is.
think about the connection between your mental health and your digestive health, that is a very real thing. Like if you look, into certain cultures, there's sauerkraut, there's kimchi, there's fermentation to help you break down your food. And that does bring a particular level of clarity. I mean, think about it. Like when you eat something that your body doesn't necessarily agree with, that impacts the rest of your day. And I don't think we think about food and the longevity of it beyond like, oh, I have a little stomach ache, or, oh, I think I'm lactose intolerant. But like those are really clues to help you unlock how to show up for yourself in the kitchen. And even like in the world we live in beyond just cooking, like, if you're eating out and you know that you have to align to a particular lifestyle, like you need to navigate it in a way that aligns to your highest health, that aligns to, you feeling your best. And how you feel your best is by eating well. Um, and there's like so many ideas about what eating well means. We have to like, I guess, deconstruct what health even means,
That's right.
and that's cultural, that's political. There's a lot of race and class implications in health.
Absolutely.
Who gets to define what healthy is, especially in the economy, where there's like all these products where everyone's trying to sell you on like, diet this and get this collagen for your skin. And I mean, there's so many simple, basic ways going back to ancestral wisdom that we know, if you don't need all these processed products, you can have simple oils for your skin, or, simple foods. Like a lot of times too, with how we cook, I think we're in an era where TikTok and social media, while there are great tools to empower people to cook, there's so much exposure to like a lot of processed ingredients and things like that. But I think right now, like we really have to get back to the basics and understanding the properties of whole foods, the properties of really quality ingredients. And I think that is something that's super overlooked, honestly. Like in my cooking class, I talk about it all the time. They're always like, asking me questions, and I'm like, less is more. You don't need to add a whole lot to make food taste good. You just really need to know how to cook, which I know isn't intuitive for everybody, which is why I teach cooking classes. But like a good okay olive oil versus a great olive oil, like that can change, your health, in the fact that your body isn't processing a whole bunch of seed oils and unhealthy fats, like that, your salts that you use. And there's like, debates about everything, but I feel like you have to pick what works for you and what your body tells you. And I think that is the ancestral wisdom, actually,
That's
being able
right.
to be intuitive with, where you're at, um,
Mm-hmm.
understanding what your body's telling you in certain moments. Like you don't always need to go to a doctor to know what your body's trying to tell you.
Absolutely.
Like if you're eating a Brussels sprout and your stomach hurts, maybe stop eating Brussels sprouts.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, you like you said, you opened it's like a can of worms. There's so many places that we can, so many things that we can go, we can talk about. So, like like access to food, you kind of brought that up, and people being able to have fresh fruit and vegetables and all of
Right,
those things. But then, like navigating like social media and online, like what is good for me, and like you saying,
right.
really just got to be in tune with yourself, and like who you are, and like you said, pay attention to how the foods that you're eating affect you. And
Mhm.
I know people, who have maybe different ailments, such as asthma. And, we know like you can't continue to have dairy products. It's just, what it is, especially certain times, when you
Or
have those flare.
eczema. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So it's paying attention. So, do you have any examples of like traditional ingredients, herbs, or spices that our ancestors used for healing that we should or we do incorporate? We should still incorporate, or we do incorporate today?
Um, my mind just goes back to again the
Mhm,
basics, like
mhm,
your basic um I call them aromatics, but like onions, bell
mhm,
peppers, ginger, garlic, salt, pepper, like all of those things have anti-inflammatory properties. Turmeric,
mhm,
whether you juice it, whether you cook with it. Like I do think it's important when you are cooking to not sometimes you can overcook food and you're taking the nutritional value out of it. So you want to make sure, when you're cooking your vegetables that you're not overcooking it, that there's still some type of crunch and like vibrant green color to get those health benefits from what you're eating. And that's a whole nother conversation too, because that's cultural and how we cook food and things like that. And I think there's a way to honor culture and, you know, eat in a way that aligns to health, because I think
mhm.
sometimes people think it has to be one or the other, and I don't
That's
think
right.
it has to be.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, you actually go down that road because I was going to ask you that question because people think you have to eat, certain types of food because it's cultural, So, I mean, we can take, for example, New Year's and, so we eat, like oftentimes like greens and black eyed peas and things like that. They're all good for you. But then sometimes people add, different fried pork chops, and other things, So it's kind of like, how do you know? In terms of looking at like, African American culinary tradition, like how do you know what things are healthy, for you and what things may not be so healthy? Like, how do you discern? Like, how do you know what to eat when?
so beyond the intuitive aspect of eating, I think we have to look at, you know, the state of health in Black folks,
Yeah.
and a lot of it is like a lot of the issues that I would say like generally
Hmm.
exist are heart, like I believe heart disease
Yes.
is. I don't
Heart
even like
disease, diabetes. Yeah. No, you're right. Hmm.
like heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure. A lot of that can be traced to sodium levels and sugar.
Hmm.
And so it's not that, we can't eat a candy yam. It's just like how many pounds of sugar are really going in there or
Yeah.
going into the dish, or, what type of sugar that makes a difference too.
Hmm.
Cane sugar, coconut sugar, like there are alternatives to thinking about how to approach certain dishes, or even like how to reduce salt. Like I like to use like low sodium broths and better salt, and knowing like how much you're salting, not just like salt and then taste your food. Like I think it's not only about the ingredients, but it's about the techniques being used as well. Um, so yeah, and then sometimes, I mean, macaroni and cheese. I'm not a vegan macaroni and cheese advocate. I don't know if it should exist. Just
That's right.
macaroni. But
Yeah.
also, I get it. It's like I just think you have to know where you land in terms
Yeah.
of tradition.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and
And also like moderation too, because like I mean, it's like you don't have to eat the macaroni and cheese every day. You know
right,
what I mean? So I
right,
think that that's
right.
also,
No,
kind of comes from.
totally agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree. Not knocking I love vegan, vegetarian, plant based, but
Yeah.
certain things I'm like, we don't have to like recreate what makes sense for you, in
Mhm.
a way that aligns to you. And the part of okay, now debunk this macaroni and cheese thing. I think part of it is the processed ingredients behind it. Like I've made
Mhm.
it before for clients, but I'm also like, there's so much like non-dairy cream cheese,
Mhm. Mhm.
know, like shred plant-based shreds, and I'm like, I feel like we should just eat a really good quality cheese if we're gonna eat
Mm,
processed ingredients. So that's a whole
yeah.
nother thing. Like eating plant-based is good when it's done right. And I
Yeah.
think it's not a French fries and salad lifestyle. You have
Yeah.
to eat whole foods and
Absolutely. Yeah.
have a balanced diet. And I think
Mhm.
that's another thing, like with eating, everyone has their philosophy, right? Like some people are like, oh, I eat to my blood type.
Mhm.
I, only eat grass-fed beef. Like whatever makes sense for you, just stick to that because I think there's so much information out there about what you think is like, philosophies about what works for that person, perhaps sharing it. But I think it sometimes takes time to figure out like what works for you. And I think in that process, you have to, it's kind of like a trial, right? Like a
Mhm.
type of experiment with yourself. Like, okay, like how do I feel after I did XYZ? What do I want to keep? What do I want to take away? Because it may not be something that somebody's like, oh, you need to stay within these
Yeah.
confines to make
That's
your
right.
own, you know?
Mhm. Yep. No, absolutely. So no, I agree. So let me ask you this. So I know you're passionate about creating immersive dining experiences. So how do you incorporate like ritual and intention into the way you prepare and present food?
That's a good question. You got to cook with love. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's the first thing. And it sounds cliche, but I think like my dad kind of helped me understand. Well, he said something to me one day. Like I had a big win in I think it was like a few months ago. And he was just like, you're helping heal people. And
That's
I'm
right.
like, wow, I never thought about what I do as healing. I just see it as I love to cook. I love food. I love bringing
Mhm.
people together. It wasn't deeper than that for me.
That's right.
But hearing him say that and then celebrating these 7 years of business, I'm like, wow, I've helped feed thousands
That's
of
right.
people at this point.
Thousands,
Like,
thousands. In
dang,
7 years, yes, I know.
like,
Thousands and thousands. That's
yeah. I
right.
mean, whether
I mean,
I
I've
tell them,
eaten your food, everybody, so many times. It's so delicious. But like you said, like you didn't weren't even thinking that's what you were doing. Yeah.
no, not at all. But now that I'm like understanding it, owning that, I'm just like, for me, of course, cooking with love, also cooking with good ingredients.
Mhm.
And I like to cook for people how I would eat, and not to say like, oh, I eat everything my client
Mhm.
eats,
Mhm.
because that's not always the case. But it is kind of like I want to prepare this in the most quality way. I want to take my time with it, and I think that's something I've had to learn over time. Like, I'm I went to culinary school, but I didn't learn everything I know in culinary school since I went a
Mhm.
little bit later in my journey.
That's right.
But I will say like the the importance of preparation when I cook for people. Like in order to cook with love, that means you have to take your time. And to take your time, that means you have to plan properly. To
Mhm.
plan properly, that means you have to have prep in your schedule.
Mhm.
And so for me, it's like really becoming one with the process of cooking. Like I think, when you think about cooking, it's like I'm putting this cake in the oven, but what did it take to get there? You
That's
had to
right.
crack the eggs, you had to measure the ingredients, you
Mhm.
had to source the ingredients. And I think for me, it's like being present in all of those parts of the process is important for me. And
Yeah.
I'm in an interesting stage too because it's like I'm growing the business and I can't do everything myself, but I am realizing like this is how Zaza's Kitchen runs. Like
That's right.
we
Mhm.
care about where we get our ingredients from.
Yeah.
Like we care about what it looks like. I as much as I want the food to taste good, I want you to love the way it looks. And
That's
so
right.
I think all of those things are what I pour into my
Yeah.
clients.
No, no, I love that. Like the whole lead in with love thing. It just made me like feel so warm and hungry. That made me hungry from the beginning, but but it just made me feel so warm and just like how you're leading with love. And it's like, for me, sometimes when you have to be careful when you're just eating out and eating, we talk about this eating other people's food and things like that because of the intention, that sometimes people, could be having a bad day, a bad life, things going on, and then they're cooking for you and that energy. So I like that you brought up that, love and intention and taking time,
Mhm.
that's a big thing, and not, trying to rush all the time, but trying to figure out, how you can plan ahead. I think that
Mhm.
that's love, right? So, and
Definitely.
it's intention. Yeah.
Definitely. And to speak a little bit more on that, like a lot of times, you know, it's the question of I have 4 kids and I want to cook for them, but I don't have time. I think part of it is like understanding what recipe you're making or what you want to cook and then breaking that down and then finding ways to put it in your day. Because I think that
Mhm.
I have this catchphrase on my Instagram where I'm like, we got food at home. And I
Yeah.
started doing that because just to talk a little bit about the backstory, like I had a hard time cooking for myself a couple of years ago. Like I'm like, I'm around food all the time. I don't want to cook after I've catered this event. Like, how do I make this make sense for me? And I don't know, this is just a personal thing, but I feel like every meal you eat should be the best. Like I'm like, I don't want just an okay taco. I want it to be the most amazing thing. I want to rave about my food every time I eat it. So with that being said, I'm like, I would rather cook my own food. Like
Mhm.
I want to love what I eat and I know what I like. And personally, I try to eat low gluten. I try to
Yeah.
eat moderate to low dairy. Like I don't do a lot of heavy
Mhm.
things, but I will eat like Parmesan and like certain
Mhm.
like feta stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I try to do whole foods, and I personally eat to my blood type. So
Mhm.
it's funny. Hey Kira, I eat steak now. I always be like, you don't like steak? No,
That's
because like
right.
I'm not eating steak. But now that I know I can should eat it for my blood type, I eat so much steak, and I
Yep, that's right. Yeah. And actually I found out some things like that as well. Like I didn't really, I realized like for my blood type, I was eating like certain kind of foods and I didn't know why my stomach was hurting. Then I started
Mhm.
to pay attention and kind of eliminate those. And then I did see a change. So I was like, okay, so I understand that. And it's
Mhm.
like sometimes we want to be, plant-based or we want to be vegetarian, for so many reasons. And I get it, but sometimes our, bodies this may not be, what they particularly want to be. So it's a thing, that you really
Agree.
have to pay attention to what's good for your own body. So I mean, I
Definitely.
definitely agree with that. So like in terms of like, food is also memory. So, what are some dishes and food traditions you associate with healing and love and ancestral connection? So it could be like times, traditions, things like that. Yeah.
I think I think a lot about holidays because I mean, I think that's just a time for gathering. So that's like a ritual that I think, and even when we think about
Mhm.
the prep and the time, like people are cooking 2 and 3 days ahead. So I think
That's
that's
right.
a ritual of like, what does it
Mhm.
take to prepare to gather the people I love to have this moment of love? Like, I think that's one. But outside of like more event based, I'm just thinking about dishes. I definitely think like tea is like, stews, like low,
Mhm.
slow cook and things that can kind of sit there and get the
Mhm.
benefits of it through a
Yeah.
like a broth or water for
Mhm.
tea. Like I think that is definitely very healing.
No, I agree. And it's kind of also like the time period. So like I was a busy mom with 3 girls, so I didn't, all of the cooking, like, so during the week, we actually had like a calendar and we
Mhm,
would go shop, we would put the food there and we would go shopping kind of based on, what we were going to cook that day for the calendar. And most of the time it was like little and quick things because it's during the week. But every Sunday morning, that was like my time. That was the time that I would cook a bigger breakfast, a bigger brunch, and I felt like that was like, like unconsciously like a healing time,
mhm,
where like, okay, this love, and we have to rush during the week, but on Sunday mornings, we're going to relax, we're going to eat good food and just kind of, and just kind of be. So, I think of those things as well. So, I know like we have a lot of busy families out there, so it's hard to get that and really be sometimes it's hard to be conscious about, what types of food that you're eating. But I feel like there's also like a day, like sometimes people have like meatless Monday or something like that, so I think that you can
kind of a
figure out,
routine.
yeah, a day, a time, a routine and things to
Yeah,
incorporate. Yeah.
definitely. I think routine is important, and I think like we have to know what works best for us. When you're saying like Sundays or your day, Um,
Mhm.
but going back to like the we got food at home thing, that is kind of why I do it too, because I'm like, okay, if you know that you have 3 hours to yourself, like maybe, and I'm not a big like, oh, eat the same thing every day kind of person, but you can prepare your proteins and then like slice up some vegetables that could be stir fry one day in a rice bowl the next day. Like
That's right.
there's ways to kind of, navigate it in a way that
Mhm.
aligns to like your family. And I also think
Mhm.
there's a lot of cool hacks out there. Like Um, Instant pots are like a game changer. Do you
That's
use
my
them?
favorite. I love it. I love an Instant Pot. That's
Yeah,
funny. Yeah.
yeah. I use my Instant pot. I'm
Like
like,
an Instant Pot hates to see me coming because I
oh,
want
me
the
too.
stews, the soups. I will put it in there in a minute.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so good. And it's like, of course, there's a beauty to slow cooking and crock pot and standing in the kitchen all day, but like that's not realistic for everybody.
That's right.
So at the
Mhm,
end, like say you made a soup, you could freeze it and then
mhm.
pop it in this pot when you want some. So
That's
there's
right.
a lot of cool ways to like make it make sense.
That's right. That's right. Okay. Well, now I want you to, I want to give you a moment to really walk us through your culinary philosophy. So, share more. So you just talked about we got food at home, but others, so share more about the mission of Zaza's Kitchen and the role of culture in your food and, how you see your work now as healing and just, feel free to speak freely. Just tell us, what you do in your own words and,
So I
I
think
guess your philosophy.
thank you. I think overall, like my main philosophy is just everyone should eat good food. Like I think
Mhm.
um when I think about that, I'm thinking about access. I think my big vision with Zaza's Kitchen is definitely like um the word isn't coming to mind, but it's social impact. Like I really
Yeah.
care to expose people who don't always have access to quality food, to whole foods, to, that type of lifestyle,
Mhm.
to say like, okay, with these ingredients, this is what you can create, or this is what you're entitled to having quality
Mhm.
experiences. I'm still in the phase of definitely building that part of my business, but I think right now, um, I would say like something I try to implement is eating seasonally. That's a huge
Ah,
part.
that's a good one.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so I do dinner party. Well, go back a little bit. So in my journey with Zaza's Kitchen, like after I left grad school,
Mhm.
um, I did the, business full time for a couple of years. It's definitely grown over time. Like I did catering. Well, I started with cooking classes virtually. Then I started to do catering. And I didn't expect catering to take off how it did, but my philosophy, well, my goal with that was to say, okay, if people are looking at my food online, I want them to be able to try it. Like, I don't want to just, show you what it looks like, but you need to know that this is good. And that's marketing for my business. Like,
Mhm.
1 year, I was like, I just want as many people to try my food as I can, as I
That's right.
can. So that kind of spiraled into the catering business growing, which, you know, grow a business, you're like, I want to be better at my craft. And so I've always wanted to go to culinary school. Um, it's interesting because I've like, sought out advice for should I go, should I not? But I was like, I know I need this experience, but I know that it has to happen in a certain way. And so
Mhm.
I went abroad. I was like, I know I want to live abroad in my 20s.
That's right.
I know that I want to go. So that was kind of two birds, one stone. But my experience in Italy was honestly very life changing. I think I'm still figuring out just like how much I'm learning as I'm continuing to grow in the business. But I would say one thing is really outside of the United States,
Mhm.
everyone
Mhm.
eats equally. Like if it's not growing, you're not eating it.
That's right.
It's that
Mhm.
simple.
Yeah.
And so one, there's so much to say about the farming industry and agricultural industry, especially right now. But
Mhm.
overall, like if you're getting food from a sustainable farm, from an ethical
Mhm.
farm, you know that one, it's grown with love and it tastes good. Like
Mhm.
a tomato that you grow at home is always going to taste better than ones you're going to buy at the grocery store. So
Yep.
that's how I was experiencing the produce over there.
Mhm.
Like we're making vegetable broth with the most amazing carrots and red onions, and they're so
Mhm.
sweet, and you don't need to add anything. And so we're going
Mhm.
to the market every Friday, and we're getting the ingredients that we're cooking with. Like the school's purchasing them, and if we don't see strawberries, we're not eating strawberries that week. It's
Yeah. Right.
the cheese makers are at the market, the meat people are at the market, the fish people. Like there's this
Mhm.
community and ecosystem of growers and makers. And that is something that I'm aspiring to like kind of have for myself in Atlanta. I think it's a little bit more difficult when you're thinking about, the cost of these things and you're thinking about how sustainable it is for a larger scale, but it is possible. So that is my philosophy, like eat seasonally, eat locally. Seasonal food, one, tastes better. And
Mhm.
something I'm really happy with is how my dinner parties, Ciao Bella, has grown. It's a 6-course Italian style dinner. And part of that experience that I curated, well, the reason I did is because when I was in Italy, we did 10-course menu executions. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was huge. Like we would spend an entire week, like 10 people, an entire week working on this menu. And the first day we wrote the menu out because we had like it was like a challenge every time. Like, okay,
Mhm.
the courses look different, the what we had to include was different. So um I learned a lot about the fine dining experience. And I had never had a course dinner that large, but I was like, if I haven't, then I know a lot of my people in Atlanta haven't. So let me bring this to them. So that's why I do Ciao Bella. And the cool thing about it is every menu is super seasonal and I don't repeat like the menus at all. So and I like it a lot too because one, like studying in Italy, I think I've learned a lot about my style of
Mhm.
cooking because a lot of times people are like, oh, like, what do you cook? And I used to really struggle with that question because I'm inspired by everything. I'm inspired by African American foodways. I have
Mhm.
Caribbean heritage. I love Thai food. I love Middle Eastern food. Like, I don't want
Yeah.
to say I'm a fusion chef. Like
Yeah.
I just don't, So
Yeah.
as time has gone on, I realized I say I'm Italian inspired, Georgia grown. A
Okay.
lot of what I do is rooted in the Italian style menu. They have like
Yeah.
a very traditional way of eating. It looks
Mhm.
like antipasto, it looks like salad, it looks like pasta and risotto, and then you eat secondo, which is like an American entree.
Mhm.
Have dessert. They have smaller portions typically, and it's super again seasonal. So with those menus, going back to Ciao Bella, I've been able to really showcase, I think, my style, which I feel like I'm coming more into.
Yeah.
Um, and it looks like sweet potato olive oil cake, which you tried, the sweet potato
Yeah.
olive oil cake
Yes. So
with the
good.
trying chantilly cream,
Yes. It was.
candied ginger. Like I'm really
Yeah.
proud of that dish, and I think it's like the perfect snapshot
Mhm.
of okay, I'm inspired by things outside of my culture, but sweet potato is the blackest ingredient you can use.
Yeah,
So,
I love this. I love all of it. You said so much. So let me open the floor for questions so people can put questions in the chat. But you just said so much in that time period. So I thought about like travel and the importance of travel and learning. And so what you learned. And then just when I travel in terms of like eating and like learning, like you said, about local, we eat what is available locally at the market. So
right.
if it's not there, then we're not eating it. So it's interesting, like, how menus and foods are made from what's, locally, what's fresh and what's locally available, and how that's important also as well to our health. So, I mean, you brought up so many things. Let's see. So we had so many questions, but let me see. All right, I'll start here. So what leftovers make the best for remixed meals? So
That's
any
a
type of,
specific
yeah.
question. Let me think.
Yeah.
Well, okay. I think that you can remix any like protein and veg. And I usually call it like a kitchen sink kind of meal. Like, okay, you're taking those leftovers, you're saucing it up. You can make it into a stir fry, put it in a taco, put it in
Mhm.
a panini sandwich. Like, I would say just like protein and veg are the
Mhm.
best. Not everything is best like remixed though. Some, you know what I mean? Like French
Yeah.
fries or things like that. But
Yeah.
yeah, protein and veg for sure.
Protein and veg. Okay, good. Let's see. Um, can bad energy in the cook's hands mess up a meal? We were talking about that. Yeah.
It can. I mean, you're not as present with the food. You're burning things unintentionally when you know you're the best. Like there's a lot of ways that it can show up, but it's not always you know, like when you're first starting out, I feel like things go well and then as things unfold, like, wait, why does this taste off? Or,
Mhm.
how did I do this? I think you kind of realize like, oh wait, like I'm not as present as I could
Mhm.
be, or my
Mhm.
energy just is throwing everything off. And we know how
Mhm.
that goes.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah,
effect.
absolutely. Let's see. Okay, so what are the top three healing foods or ingredients you recommend everyone keep in their kitchen?
Ginger, turmeric, kimchi.
Kimchi. I know. I've been trying to like my daughter's been trying to get me to eat this kimchi, and I like, okay, it's so good for you. Yeah, I'm good. I'm trying to get used to it. I kind of grew up in Pittsburgh, so we ate sauerkraut. So we had a lot of European, immigrants in Pittsburgh, so we had that. So I'm okay with sauerkraut, I guess. But I'm learning to like kimchi. Is really
I'm
good for
gonna
you.
show you the brand I like. It's
Okay.
this very specific brand. It's pretty spicy and
Okay.
it's really good. I think
Okay.
part of it too is just kind of like just really quickly. I'm forgetting the quote I want to share, but
Mhm.
we can't always eat with the idea of satisfaction when we know we're eating for our health. I
Yeah.
don't eat kimchi like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to eat this kimchi. Well, when I first started eating it, now I
Uh-huh.
crave it. Now I'm like,
Yeah.
I need kimchi.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
do think like sometimes we have to take out the mental like, angst against the
Yeah.
thing.
Mhm.
Um, like some people hate ginger shots, but
Yeah.
you should have a
Yeah.
ginger shot.
Yeah.
So
No.
I just think it's like kind of compartmentalizing like how we're
Mhm.
eating because
Mhm.
everything isn't for taste. Like meals we want to love, but certain
Right.
ailments, elixirs, those
Mhm.
are they have a utility behind it. So
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Sometimes you're absolutely right. Sometimes we got to eat what we know we're supposed to have for our health, and then there are times where we can, splurge a
yeah,
little bit and eat some, I agree. I agree.
yeah.
So, like, can you share, okay, two questions. Okay, one, do you know of a good substitute for salt or sodium?
Honestly,
Anything, and yeah, what's a good sodium substitute that would surprise most people or something that, or
I would
yeah.
say mm, no. And the reason I'm saying I don't have one, I don't think so. I would say maybe soy sauce.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Soy sauce, but then there's sodium there.
Mm-hmm.
But to be a little scientific, you need salt.
Yeah.
Like certain people need less should have less salt,
Mm-hmm.
but salt is a necessary ingredient.
Yeah.
If you want to learn more about why, there's a book and documentary, well, docu-series called Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat. But
Mm-hmm.
salt complements other ingredients. So the levels that we're salting at shouldn't be high, but you actually can't taste food without salt. It's
Yeah. And it's
that's
also, yeah, it's good for absorption as well.
Mhm.
So, some salt is definitely necessary. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's see. So, let's see. We did, I don't know if we did this. Can you share a recipe or meal you make when you're feeling spiritually or emotionally off balance? So, I guess it's sort of like what's a comfort meal or something like that. What's your favorite?
I have a few. I like I like risotto a lot. I think it's just like I like the process of making it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it takes a little time, but that's comforting for me. Lately I've been really into making like short ribs or like a roast.
Mm-hmm.
I do that in my Instant Pot actually, but I'll put that with pasta. Um, and yeah, like a bronze cut pasta, and that's really good. So I think those are my two comfort meals. Like maybe it's just me. I feel like food in a bowl is just comforting. So
Yeah, yes, true. I do
yeah,
like to put my food. I eat out of bowls a lot. That's funny. Rather than plates, I like to put my food in a bowl. I don't know. You're right.
yeah.
But it's funny. My comfort food is actually spaghetti, and the reason why is because my mother used to like make spaghetti, right? And so for her, it's funny because it was just like something to give me quick, when I was growing up. But it kind of turned into like a comfort food. So like to this day if my mom makes spaghetti, I'm loving it. I'm eating it. Also, like she used to make liver with peppers and onions. I hated liver growing up. Hate it, right? But then like later on, I needed to have some for my health, right? And so I
Mhm.
wouldn't let anybody make it except for my mom. I'm like, nope, not
Right.
eating it. So if she makes it, then I can eat it. So I think that's also like psychologically, it's, and spiritually that
Mhm.
I want my mom's food when I need to be
Sure.
comforted. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. So, what advice do you have for people who want to shift their relationship with food? So, not just eating healthier, but being more conscious and consciously and culturally rooted.
I would say first meet yourself where you're at. Like just kind of take inventory of maybe some limiting beliefs you may have about food or just realize like what is your philosophy right now? Where do you want it to be? I think it's important to just show up for yourself every day. It's kind of like riding a bike. Like the more you do it, the better you get at it. You know, the faster you go, the less you have to think about it. So I think it's important to just understand, like, I don't even want to say goals, but what are your intentions? Is the intention to cook at home more? Is it to have better digestive health? Is it to save money? Like, we just have to be clear on the why, and then kind of backwards, backwards, go backwards and strategize. And so I think it's important to use your resources. There's a lot out there, which can be overwhelming, but YouTube, there's great things. Pinterest, even ChatGPT. Hey, ChatGPT, I would like to outline a menu to help with my digestive health. I can't eat these things. I would like to eat 3 times a day. My budget is this. Like, there are ways to, design it in a way that makes sense. So I would just say start and go small. Like, every day, commit to yourself. It's not about in the next 5 months I'm about to
Yeah.
this. No, like, just treat it. Yeah.
One day at a time. Like, yes,
Yeah.
tomorrow, let's see, what can I eat? Or today, like, exactly. I
And I
agree
will
with
say
you.
this too, going back to your point about planning meals, I think there's an art to it, because a lot of times, just generally, like, there's a lot of us are like, I want to cook at home more, but then you eat out because of the time and work or whatever. But I think when you really map out and take time and have like a meeting with yourself, take a piece of paper, Monday through Friday. You don't have to know everything you're eating, but you can make it simple. We're gonna have brown rice, chicken, and spinach. You can sauce that up, make it whatever you want. You could be a, cilantro lime brown rice with a mojo chicken and a crema sauce or whatever, and have you have ingredients to do all that. But start with the basics, and then you're gonna write your grocery list from there.
That's
And
right.
also just kind of know like what you want to keep in your pantry. And I will say, with intentions, you need to not keep food at your house that
Absolutely.
does
So
not
true.
align with your goals. You can eat it out, treat yourself, cool, but y'all know when we bought that pint of ice cream.
It's gonna get eaten.
Yeah,
Exactly. Don't br
yeah.
no, I'm a big advocate of that. Try not to bring it into the house if I
Mhm.
know I'm not supposed to have it. So there are times that I will though, but I'll be like, okay, when this is gone, that's it. Like, I'm
Yeah,
not gonna buy
exactly.
it. Or like you said, I try to eat out. Sometimes I'll have a taste for something. And
Mhm,
so instead of like just totally denying, like I'll go get a little bit, like I
mhm,
I can do that. Like I can just take a couple of bites, a couple of spoons
mhm.
of ice cream and I'm good. But I know everybody can't do that. Like sometimes I just need the taste
Certain
and like,
type of discipline.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
Mhm,
but I definitely believe in making sure that what food you have aligns. So
mhm,
like you said, it like, write down the things that you're going to eat and make sure you have that. So if you are cooking chicken, you can, buy like a bigger pack and you can, separate it. And then, like you said, you can make different sauces and things like that.
exactly.
But
Mhm.
yeah, so, being intentional about that. So, let's
One more
see.
thing
Go
too,
ahead.
sorry, set
Go ahead.
yourself up for success. Like,
Mhm.
I always try to think about my future self. Like, okay, if I'm in the weeds in a week, what can I do to prepare myself to stick to the goal?
That's right.
Cut your
Mhm.
onions and peppers ahead of time and
Yeah.
store them. And store them intentionally. Put them in glass containers instead of plastic. It'll last longer.
That's
Season your protein ahead of time and freeze it.
Mhm.
That way you just thaw it out and throw
Yeah.
it, in the oven or whatever. Or even if you can't cook, like, I'm not the biggest advocate for this, but you could go to like a Whole Foods and get, the family meal and section
Mhm.
that out for your meal prep for the week. Like, there are ways to be smart about it. You just gotta get really creative.
No, no, I agree with that. That's really great advice. So we had a couple of more questions and then we'll kind of start closing out. But in your chef experience, what are some foods people think they hate, but then they try it and they love it?
I like that question, because something I will say, the gift of Zaza's Kitchen to people is they're like, "Oh, I don't eat this," and they're like, "Oh, I didn't know I like this until you made it," and I'm like, "Yeah, kale,
Yeah.
eggplant." Honestly,
Yeah.
most vegetables that people kind of toot their
Yeah.
nose up at,
Yeah.
Brussels sprouts. But I realized too, exposure is key. One, which
Mhm.
relates back to the access piece I was talking about earlier, but also two, I realized and this is like a whole other conversation. But the best way to expose somebody to something new is to try it with them and explain what they're eating. If
Okay.
I put the kale in front of people and like, all right, eat this, they're like,
Right.
but if I'm like, oh, this is how I made it.
Uh-huh.
Here, let's try it together. You have them. So there's an art to sharing those types of things with people.
No, it's true. I used to hate Brussels sprouts. I thought Brussels sprouts were like the biggest abomination. And I know a lot of people felt that way when they were young.
Uh,
Someone actually cooked some Brussels sprouts for me that knew what they were doing, and they were the best thing. Like it was crazy. It was crazy. Like I was like, no, this can't be a Brussels sprout. And it's
mhm.
like they crisped it up, and it was just
Yep,
so good that then I like became this like a Brussels sprout. Like that's all I wanted to eat. Like even when you go out to the movies, sometimes some of the places have like Brussels sprouts. Like I'm ordering
right,
Brussels sprouts instead of popcorn at the movie. Like but
right.
it's like totally changed. So I get that. There are
Mhm.
things that we think that are like not the best thing, but then it's really in the way that it's prepared. Like
Right.
you said, who introduces it to you, and
Mhm.
all of that. So yeah, I totally agree. So you have any tips this will be the last one. Do you have any tips for making everyday cooking feel more like ritual or healing practice?
Um, you got to be present when you cook. That's like the biggest
Mhm.
thing I could say. I think first, your kitchen has to be clean.
That's
That is
that
so,
right there. That
like,
yeah,
you can't
yeah,
think straight if your kitchen's not clean.
that, yeah.
Um, and I think you need to clear, like, I feel like for me at least, like the kitchen is like a creative playground. So you want to have the ability to kind of
Mhm,
flow and
mhm.
move. And if your
That's
space
right.
isn't clear, you can't do that. So I think that's one thing. I mean, I think there's so many ways to approach cooking, but I would say, like, for myself, my favorite times cooking are when I kind of know what I'm going to make. And then
Mhm,
I get lost in the ingredients because it's like I'm
mhm.
like kind of thinking on my feet. I'm
Yeah.
letting the ideas come to me, but you have to kind of be in like a clear head space and, you
Mhm,
know, spiritual space to be able to like understand what you want to do. And I mean,
mhm.
like any art, cooking is super intuitive.
Yeah,
It's intuitive. It's part intuition, it's part science.
that's right.
And so it's important to be able to like know how to hear those voices in your head. Like when people are like, how you know how much seasoning to put? And it's like, because
That's
my ancestors told me so.
They
Like
told me. Exactly. I needed this. That's true. That's so true. I mean, you said a word there because I have to have my kitchen clean. I have to. And I'm one of those people. Not only do I have to have it clean before I cook, but I also have to clean as I go. So as I'm cooking, I do have to kind of like rinse or put stuff away. Like I can't make, like, if it gets too much, it'll be like, okay.
it's overwhelming. It's
Yeah,
over.
it's overwhelming. So I try to stay organized. It just helps me. And then I also learned like from my mom. So I'm telling her business. So she probably gonna tell me off later. But when we were younger, she used to wreck the rice. So we like, don't wreck the rice, because she would put the rice on and she would leave, like go in another room or something like that. And then the rice would burn on the bottom. Mom, sorry, I told your business, mom. But so I also learned that, I had to kind of stay in the kitchen.
Mhm.
There's some things, like you said, an
Right,
Instapot, things you can put on and you can leave, but sometimes you have to stay there and actually cook. So,
right.
some things that I learned as well. So, I mean, Chef Zah, this has been so great. So, thank you for bringing flavor. You made me hungry, all the wisdom, all the things. And, you reminded us that healing doesn't just happen on a massage table or in a ceremony, per se. It happens when we choose the right ingredients. We honor our grandmothers, our grandfathers, hear our ancestors help us with ingredients and their recipes, and prepare our food with love and intention. So to our viewers, I think it's been so good. So some of the takeaways, just reconnecting with your kitchen, and like you said, that having the ingredients that you need, planning, what it is, taking your time, putting the love and intention, cleaning up, all of those things, learning about spices and foods that our ancestors use and things that we still use. And we talked about the sweet potato, which is so important, to the whole, not only Africa, but African diaspora. I would say sweet
Mhm.
potatoes, like rice, those are, like you said, those are very, very black, you
Right.
know. Yeah, cooking with intention, and just remembering that, every meal is an opportunity to heal, to reconnect, with not only with yourself, but with your ancestors, your family, and all of those things. So, so Chef Zah, any final comments, and also please share how we can connect with you. What are you doing? Where are we going to find you? All of those things.
Sure. So where to find me? I'm Zaza's Kitchen on all social media platforms. So that's just Zazas Kitchen. I'm on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. And I also can be found at the Cook's Warehouse doing cooking classes. So there I teach about 3 to 5 times a month. I teach things like soups. I teach things like pasta. I have a steak night class. I have a lot of fun classes, very seasonal menus. Sometimes they're for entertaining, sometimes they're for just everyday at home cooking. So those classes are the next one is April 8th. But you can check the link in my bio on Instagram for upcoming classes. I also have a dinner party series on which I mentioned earlier, Ciao Bella. That is the next one is April 18th. That one's gonna be beautiful. It's gonna be a spring menu. So I'm thinking things like purple sweet potato and asparagus puree and Earl Grey and rose tiramisu. So I'm really excited for that menu. I think if you're a foodie and you really like eclectic food, that is the space for you. So that's coming up. And then I do catering. So if you have an event coming up that you need food provided for, that is what me and my team do. We do small events from dinners for two to large events for like dinners and for 350.
Yeah,
So
awesome. Yes, yep.
yeah.
So yes, I highly recommend Chef Zaza, top tier. Yes, highly recommend. 10 out of 10. Yes, we love it. So thank you so much for that. And family, if you're loving this conversation, you're gonna love our African and African diaspora natural and traditional medicine certificate program even more. This program dives deeper into plant medicine, ancestral wisdom, holistic healing, and yes, food as ritual and medicine. So, let us know. I'll give you more information about that. Next Sunday, we're talking about something exciting that also kind of bridges this as well. So, natural medicine travel. So, how healing across borders and returning to the source can deepen your spiritual journey. So, don't miss it. And so thank you again, Chef. You truly fed our souls today. It was awesome. I'm hungry. Like, I'm ready to go eat right now. So, to all of you watching, thank you for joining another beautiful episode of Uncovering Hidden Healing. So don't forget to subscribe at Save Women on YouTube. Leave us a comment with your favorite ancestral dish and share this episode with someone you think needs a little soul food. So until next time, stay grounded, stay grateful, and keep uncovering the hidden healing all around you. So thanks so much, Chef.
Thank you for having me.